downtown where you can get a date for 50, 60, 70, even 80% off the original social marketplace price. Now available in paperback and e-readers. A steam horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Historical couples in crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Historical Couples in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Historical Couples in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about teen mom Janelle Evans and the 6 men she was involved with. Now, Janelle Evans was one of the stars of the infamous MTV reality show Teen Mom. And as one of the reality stars of Teen Mom, she's infamously known for getting pregnant by her boyfriend Andrew Lewis when she was just 16 years old. However, Janelle Evans, as I see it, wound up on the road to becoming a woman in crisis who was a part of a series of couples in crisis way before she ever got pregnant, and she wound up on that road possibly due to the dysfunctional model that she saw as related to her parents. Now, Janelle Evans basically grew up in a home where she got serious daddy issues because her father abandoned the family, and as she was raised in that home by a single mother, she basically wound up in a home where she didn't get a model for manhood from her father, and since she didn't get that model for manhood from her father, she didn't have an example of manhood to see as she got older as related to choosing a man to get involved with. Moreover, I believe what put Janelle Evans on the road to sexual promiscuity at an early age is the fact that she was not getting her emotional needs met by her father. And since she didn't get her emotional needs met by her father to make her emotionally secure, what happened with Janelle Evans is that she basically started looking for love from boys, hoping to find that emotional security that she looked for to get from her father and get that validation and approval. And since she didn't know how to get attention and approval from boys in a positive way, possibly what she did was look to use her body and offer sex to these boys, hoping that this would lead to her being able to find the kind of love only a father can give a girl. But sadly, instead of her finding the love that a father could give a girl, what she learned how to do was commodify a relationship, and like I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis. And as she looked to commodify the relationship, she became sexually promiscuous. And as she became sexually promiscuous, she got involved with a series of boys and young men ever before she even got involved with this guy, Andrew Lewis, and basically was looking to do anything to keep a guy with her. And I have to wonder if Janelle Evans was possibly sexually abused in the past, because usually when it comes to girls like this, there is usually a situation where they were possibly sexually abused to make them this promiscuous. And Janelle Evans in her memoir says that she was addicted to sex, but what I believe she was addicted to really was the attention she was receiving from these boys, attention that she hoped that would fill the void that a father would have provided for her by meeting her emotional needs. That insecurity basically put her on this road to sexual promiscuity, and this road to sexual promiscuity had her again bartering her body, hoping to create a covert contract where she could possibly find this love, but that love could not be found because the love of a mother and a father is unique and special, and sadly she didn't get that love, so she hoped to again use sex as a tool to keep boys interested in her and keep them looking to get involved with her. And sadly, as she looked to get that attention from boys, this is how she wound up pregnant at 16 years old with the first guy she was involved with, Andrew Lewis. And as she got involved with Andrew Lewis, she basically wound up getting pregnant. And as she got pregnant, she wound up having her first child, Jace, in August of 2009. And while Andrew Lewis promised to again help raise his son, he basically, like many beta males, wound up disappearing from her life once the child was born a couple of months into it. Now, he basically was trying to allegedly get in contact with her, but eventually it turned into a battle between her and her mother as related to custody. And again, this was about the mother basically looking to maintain her smooth world because she didn't want to be further embarrassed by her daughter and didn't want to be further embarrassed by her daughter, basically looking to try to take control of this son. But the whole thing is, if the way she raised her daughter would lead to a girl going on the road to becoming a woman in crisis, the way she would raise the son would also lead to him becoming a man in crisis. Now, after getting involved with Andrew Lewis, again, the first baby daddy, then Janelle Evans decided to get involved with another toxic male. Again, another toxic male, because when it comes to women like Janelle Evans, this situation with these women is a pattern that they create. A pattern they create because they're hoping to have fixed the relationship with the first man that they had. And again, they really can't fix that relationship because what happens with these women is they don't understand that when they have sex with boys, what happens is you get the spirit and DNA of that man inside of you. And that spirit and DNA of that man inside of you is supposed to be what leads to you and that man bonding and becoming one under God. But sadly, the two didn't become one under God as related to her first sexual encounter. And as a result of that, she had multiple boys, again, inside of her at an early age. And all of these multiple boys and these multiple spirits created, again, this situation where this woman was becoming more and more emotionally numb. And as she became more and more emotionally numb, what happened to Janelle Evans is that what she was doing was not getting in, while she was getting involved with different men, what was happening was she was getting involved in this pattern and paradigm where she was basically, while she was with different men in her physically outside, mentally she was trying to get involved with the same man. And as she looked to get involved with the same man, she was hoping to eventually reconcile on a subconscious level this relationship she had with the first boy she had sex with. And as she tried to reconcile that relationship, she hoped to eventually find a relationship that would eventually work. She hoped to eventually find a relationship where things would work out. And when things didn't work out with her using sex as a way to barter her body and finding the love that she wanted, what happened with Janelle Evans is she hoped to again escalate the stakes and hope to escalate the stakes where she would be able to eventually get this man to commit. And that's where she created the covert contract with the first man that she got involved with, in this first guy, Andrew Lewis, hoping that this baby would make this man commit. But sadly, none of these boys wanted to commit to her, and they didn't want to commit to her because of the easy sexual access they were getting, because for these boys, what they valued was the social currency they were receiving by being able to get this girl to drop her skid mark jockey panties and them being able to put the carbon rod inside of her, all in exchange for a 2-piece chicken dinner from Church's Chicken, a tray of shrimp fried rice and chicken wings, and or a series of hamburgers from Wendy's or McDonald's in a biggie bag meal. And as they wound up busting a nut in her after they gave her the biggie bag, they basically got the social currency that they wanted. And Janelle Evans thought, oh, if she could have this baby for this guy, this would eventually lead to that guy winding up eventually loving her. That was the covert contract that she created, but sadly, that contract wasn't fulfilled by any of those boys before she got involved with Andrew Lewis. And when that whole relationship turned to her, with the father leaving and her basically not being able to form that relationship where they could bond and form a family. Sadly, what happened with this whole situation is when this relationship didn't work out between this father and her as related to things, this is where Janelle Evans her life went into a further state of decline, because she had already had one baby with this guy, and the mother took that baby, and taking that baby further took that girl further down the road to becoming a woman in crisis, because that enabled her to continue on with her sexual promiscuity without taking accountability for her actions at a young age. And without her having to take accountability for her sexual promiscuity and dealing with the consequences of that sexual promiscuity, this is where Janelle Evans met Kiefer Delp. And as she met Kiefer Delp, she met yet another toxic male, a toxic male that created a pattern and profile of the kind of guy she wanted to deal with. And again, as she dealt with this kind of guy, she basically was out here possibly abusing drugs and possibly hooking up with this dude. And again, this was a very possibly abusive relationship between the two of them. And basically this rocky romance further took her down the road to decline, because again, this woman had a pattern of dealing with toxic males, because toxic males, again, these are the ones who want the easy sexual access and are looking to just offer these girls anything from two-piece chicken dinners from the red and white chicken place or the Church's chicken, or offer them a extra value meal from McDonald's, or offer them some shrimp fried rice and chicken wings. They know that this is the easiest way to get sexual access to these girls, because just them paying attention to her will enable her to look to offer her body to them. And this is how she wound up with this guy. Who basically was a toxic male who basically had issues of its own. Again, this Kiefer Delp basically was a guy who was a man in crisis, a ticking time bomb, and their relationship only was 2 years, but 5 years after that, Kiefer Delp was basically arrested for running a meth lab and wound up in a correctional facility. But as Kiefer Delp was on his way to these correctional facility and was doing time in prison, sadly what happened with Janelle Evans was she was continuing on her road to getting involved with more toxic males. And even though she was a teen mom of a child that her mama was taking care of, what Janelle Evans did was look to get involved with another type of toxic male. And as she got involved with this toxic male in 2011, she then got involved with this guy named Gary Head. Now, this Gary Head guy basically was one of these simps that I talk about as related to my classic video, Why Smart Men Avoid Single Mothers. And he decided to get involved with this single mom, hooked up with this single mom on a break. And he hooked up with a girl. He basically hooked up with a girl, and she basically got involved with him in 2011 and then got engaged in 2012. And as they got engaged, he then decided to hook up with a girl, and that relationship basically turned into a domestic violence incident, showing how Janelle Evans was again looking to get involved with toxic males, because again she was looking for a love from a man. But the thing is, she couldn't find love from a man. She was basically someone who had a pattern of picking toxic males because she basically got no father in her life to show her a model for a man. And as she was looking for love, she was at the bottom of the world due to her low self-esteem, getting involved with just dysfunctional males. And after getting involved with Gary Head, again, the simp who basically, he didn't really want her, he just wanted the eye to possess her because she thought she was somewhat paying attention to him. And this simp basically, again, wanted to get involved with her because he saw her as an object and not a person. Because a smart man who, if he had saw this girl who had basically, again, was a single mother and had an arrest record, he would have left that woman alone left that woman alone because he would have saw that this was a toxic woman and had nothing to do with her, especially after finding out she was a single mom. But Janelle Evans continued on after this whole physical altercation that he got involved with her because he possibly wanted to possess her. And this beta male basically wanted to possess her because he saw her as an object and not a person. He basically wanted to fit her into his smooth world. But as reality set in and he saw how toxic this woman was, he then got into this physical altercation that led to him getting arrested at her North Carolina home. Now, after Janelle Evans' relationship with Gary Head fell apart, she then got involved with Courtland Rogers, and this basically showed me a pattern with this woman, a pattern of her not taking time to reflect on her failed relationships, a pattern of her not looking to take a critical look at her relationships and what she was doing wrong. And this woman definitely needed to be in therapy. She definitely needed to be in therapy as related to her situation, because I believe what was really driving her as related to the situation of getting involved with these men is possible, again, trauma from this father not being in her life, one, and two, possible sexual abuse by someone, because sexual promiscuity, again, and looking for love in relationships, that has to do a lot with sexual abuse. And I think her getting involved with Courtland Rogers was an effort to try to save herself. And this guy basically was a friend of hers for years, and he was basically fitting in that pattern of beta males. And this relationship really reminds me a lot of Kate from the Drew Carey show, where the guys who were friends were looking to get involved with her, and she possibly thought, oh, since the regular guys, things aren't working, I'll look for love from a friend. And she thought that a friend in this whole case would be a better lover for her. That's what she thought, and she thought that, oh, this friend that she got involved with would possibly be that guy who would be that good man who would take care of her. But this is an even worse situation, because when it comes to the guy who's a friend, he's usually a beta orbiter. And this beta orbiter, in many cases, is usually a guy who's possibly subconsciously seething with anger because he wasn't the one who had the courage to be able to get an opportunity to talk to this woman, angry at himself because he didn't have the courage to offer up that two-piece chicken dinner from the Arab red and white chicken place, or the two-piece from Church's Chicken, or the scrimp fried rice, or the burgers and fries that would allow him to be able to get her to drop the skid mark jockey panties, and him to be able to put the carbon rod in the atomic waste reactor. And as he was subconsciously angry about having an ashy dick and extra dry balls, he basically eventually, once he got his chance, he got involved with this woman and eventually convinced her to marry him because he could possibly be a father to another man's child, which he was also angry about. And as he was angry about this, their relationship eventually led to him getting married, and they got engaged in November of 2012, then tied the knot in a courthouse ceremony, then eventually broke up in January, then reunited and were arrested for heroin possession and assault. And again, she then filed for divorce from this guy. And again, this was a whole paradigm of the nice guy who eventually thought he got his chance with his dream woman, but it wound up in a nightmare, because of his subconscious anger at this woman and the fact that this woman already had the spirits and DNA of multiple men inside of her, that were pulling her apart. I go in depth on this in my book, The Woman Crisis. This woman basically had the spirits and DNA of multiple men inside of her, and that made it where she could not bond with this man, and she filed for divorce from this man after being arrested for heroin possession and assault. And after they filed for divorce, the divorce wasn't finalized until June of 2014, because the state of North Carolina has a law that says that it needs to be a year-long separation for a divorce. But the relationship with Courtland Rogers basically showed how this woman basically was dealing with the classic nice guy who was going to come in and try to put on a cape and try to play Captain Save him, And as he looked to play Captain Save-Him, like I talk about in my ebook, Misadventures of Captain Save-Him, he wound up smashed in the face with kryptonite doo-doo, smashed in the face with kryptonite doo-doo by a toxic woman, smashed in the face with that kryptonite doo-doo by that toxic woman, that eventually led to them winding up with the nice guy finishing last with a boot in his ass, and finishing last with that boot in his ass because he basically got involved with his dream woman, and she basically made a nightmare of his life, a nightmare of his life he could have avoided, because if she was out here with these other guys and became a teen mom, then she's somebody you charge to the game and keep it moving. Now, as this marriage wound up falling apart with Courtland Rogers, and her nice guy, White Knight, basically showed that he had a black heart. This is where Janelle Evans started to get desperate, and as she started to get desperate, this is where she wound up getting on online dating. Now, I've talked about in my book, Stop Simping in Cyberspace, that when it comes to online dating, the only people on there are extremely desperate people who really do not know how to function as related to social relationships, and they go to online dating because they know that people on there are desperate for any attention, and that's what happened with Janelle Evans. She went from being involved with boys in school and having relationships outside to becoming the single mother who had a failed marriage and then became on online dating. And as she got on online dating, she met Nathan Griffith on Tinder. And as she met Nathan Griffith on Tinder, she basically went from becoming a woman who was, again, in a series of toxic relationships with men she knew outside of the world to men she was meeting on online dating. And Nathan Griffith basically was a guy who was basically desperate. I mean, he came on online dating, and after she met this guy on 2013, even while she was still married to this other guy, Courtland Rogers, she basically got involved with this guy and wound up getting pregnant by him and having her second child by her second man that she was involved with. And the second man she got involved with, she got engaged to him almost immediately. I mean, she didn't even know this guy that long. And again, she basically wound up getting pregnant with this guy's baby, and then eventually got engaged to this guy. And then after she got engaged to this guy, she started to form her paradigm of failure, where the situation deteriorated and this guy got arrested for domestic violence for pinning her to a toilet to forcibly remove an engagement ring from her finger. So the entire relationship was not even together because it wasn't really based on anything of substance. It was basically based on desperation, because she had to be desperate to go on to online dating. And again, the only guys on online dating are dusty dudes who can't get a woman on their own. And that was shown by the way this simp basically rushed to get engaged to this woman, rushed to get involved with this woman he met online, who he hooked up, and again, learned the consequences of what happens when you go out here and get involved with women on places like Tinder, who are eager to drop the skid mark jockey draws, to allow you easy sexual access. And as they get easy sexual access, these guys have to deal with the consequences of their actions, and that's what leads to them being involved in a toxic relationship with a toxic woman. And this guy could have possibly found that out had he took some time to vet this woman and listen to her talk about her previous history, again, of her father abandoning her having sexual promiscuity with multiple sexual partners, her having a child out of wedlock. This guy could have possibly avoided 18 years of misery in child support court, but sadly this simp ran to online dating instead of taking and shooting his shot outside in the real world. And sadly, as he got involved with this woman, Janelle Evans, he basically wound up in a toxic situation where he tried to work things out, but then everything just fell apart once again. Now, after getting involved with this guy Nathan Griffith and having his child, where she has two children by two different fathers, this is where she wound up getting involved with another man in online dating in 2015, David Eason. And as she got involved with David Eason after meeting him on Tinder, she quickly found herself pregnant with a child that she had a miscarriage with, and then wound up getting pregnant again with the third child by the third man. And again, this third man was just as equally toxic as the previous men. And even though they got engaged, she called 911 and accused her husband of assaulting her in a domestic violence incident. And that situation eventually led to them winding up breaking up for a while, even though they wound up getting married. And then eventually they then wound up filing for divorce. And eventually this relationship wound up falling apart with David Eason, because he basically wound up in a situation, again, with a toxic woman, because basically the only guys who go on places like Tinder are beta males who have no male life skills or male survival skills and male social skills, so they get involved with female predators like this. And as they get involved with female predators like this, what happens is that they find themselves in a situation where this woman, again, cannot bond with them spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, because, again, they have the spirits and DNA of other men inside of them. And because they have those spirits and DNA of other men inside of them, those women cannot pair bond. And yes, they can give you easy sexual access. Unfortunately, the sexual access you get basically leads to you getting jammed up with a woman who, again, cannot follow your lead because she doesn't know how to be a helpmeet to a man, because this was not modeled for her by her mother. So she's basically following the same dysfunctional pattern as her mother. And as she follows the dysfunctional pattern of her mother, she winds up getting involved with toxic men similar to that of the missing father, or men who basically are looking to prey on her because she's basically easily available. Unfortunately, those men wind up in a path of having to deal with hard times, because when you're dealing with a woman who basically is on the road to becoming a woman in crisis, she does not know how to function in a relationship, and that is shown by the pattern of behavior that Janelle Evans participated in, a pattern of behavior that basically follows the paradigm of failure that I talk about in my book, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Now, a lot of people will say black single mothers are notorious for this paradigm of failure, but it was white women who basically instituted the paradigm of failure. And again, a lot of the women who follow feminism and think that they're independent and don't need a man, or they wind up in dysfunctional situations even before feminism, because a lot of women before feminism wound up in situations like this because they didn't have a father in their life to give them guidance, show them a model for manhood, and show them an example of manhood where they would see leadership shown to them. And since they didn't see a model for manhood that showed them leadership, these women wander in the wilderness and they just gravitate to whatever toxic man is available. And sadly, as they get involved with these toxic men who are in crisis themselves, what happens to these women is that they wind up involved in toxic relationships where they have to endure abuse and look to escape through drugs and drug addiction because they have issues in and of themselves that they have not worked out and really need to work out in counseling. And with Janelle Evans, sadly, in the years that she was involved with men, she never took that time to reflect on these relationships. She just rushed into another one, hoping that the next one would be better. But the better thing for her would have been to go to counseling to deal with the numerous issues that she had. Sadly, the people at MTV didn't care about her issues to say, look, let's get this girl some counseling, let's get this girl some help so that she can break out of this pattern of dysfunctional relationships with men. No, they just saw her as entertainment, and this entertainment basically being something they could use as related to getting entertainment. And again, each man that she got involved with was progressively worse, and each man that she got with was progressively worse, but each man was basically her in a relationship with the same man. What you have to understand is that on a subconscious level, this woman was involved with the same man, and she was looking to try to fix the relationship she had with that man. And sadly, she didn't work out that relationship with that man, and that's how she became a part of a couple in crisis 6 straight times. She became a part of a couple in crisis 6 straight times because she didn't understand that she was subconsciously in a pattern of dysfunction, a pattern of dysfunction that where she thought she was going somewhere with different men, she was actually in the same place going nowhere, because she was involved with the same man 6 different times, and 6 different times she got the same result because she couldn't identify the pattern and paradigm of behavior she was participating in, and how that pattern and paradigm of behavior was basically destroying her life. And sadly, at 30-something years old, she still hasn't figured out this pattern, and sadly possibly won't figure out that pattern without the help of a mental health counselor. And sadly, that's why Janelle Evans wound up becoming a part of a couple in crisis. But I would say they found the common denominator for her being in that whole series of relationships is her. So basically, this woman in crisis just got involved with men in crisis, and that's why this woman in crisis basically wound up a baby mama with 3 kids by 3 different fathers. And a lot of people want to say, oh, it's black women who do this. No, black women following the pattern of white women like this. White women who basically are not women, but feminists, and these feminists basically wind up on a road to becoming women in crisis. Now, if you want to learn how to identify the behaviors that lead to women winding up in situations like Janelle Evans, you can pick up my books, The Woman Crisis and Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Woman Crisis and Why 70% of Black Women Are Single at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to understand and identify female predators and learn why you shouldn't put the cape on for them, you can pick up my ebook, Misadventures of Captain Save 'em, on Amazon.com. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. And if you want to learn how to avoid winding up in situations with women like this, you can pick up my book, Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance on other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Now, this was a video requested by a viewer, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App or the PayPal by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.